Welcome to My Two Cents with Keith Beggs from Steadfast Wealth Strategies. In this podcast, we show high-level executives and business owners why comprehensive financial planning and executive bonus structures don't have to be too good to be true. Keith draws on his experience in realistic financial planning, and expert guests share his 2 cents about academically based financial planning that you have to hear to believe. Now, on to the show.
Welcome back to the My Two Cents podcast with Keith Beggs of Steadfast Wealth Strategies. COVID-19 is having a tremendous impact on the college experience, not just for current students, but for prospective students as well. Keith's guest this episode is Adam Blumenthal. Adam is the co-founder of the College Authority, a leader in helping parents and students navigate the college planning process. Today, Keith and Adam will discuss how COVID has disrupted and changed this experience and what parents need to be aware of as they start or move through the process.
Great. Thank you, Patrice. Hey, Adam, how you doing?
Doing well. How about yourself?
Doing well. I wish we could do this in office, but like everything right now, right? We're doing it virtually. So, well, let's jump in here, Adam. What are the biggest changes or the biggest concerns parents are having right now due to the interruption of COVID when it comes to college planning?
Keith, that's a great question. I get that, I think, asked more now than ever, obviously, with their biggest concerns. It used to be about college admissions financial aid. Now it's how does COVID affect college admissions financial aid? I think there's a few big things families got to really concentrate on. Number one is college admissions deadlines are changing, and each college is changing day by day. So that's number one. Number two, I hear this all the time. It's like, hey, Adam, I can't even go visit a college campus. Can't even step on college campuses. Some of them are closed, or some of them are you could visit, but you can't go into any buildings. What do I do there? And then obviously a big thing is the AP test changes and everything that's going on with that. And is it even possible? My kids, should they take AP classes or honors classes? Is that even going to matter? So if you want me to, I can kind of jump in a couple quick little tidbits for each of those and help give some free advice to a couple families. I know if your listeners are probably the same thing.
Those.
Sure.
Just elaborate a little bit on those for me.
I think the biggest one to start is, hey, if you've got a junior, even a senior, would be college campus tours. So again, they're open, they're closed. This summer they were all closed. Now they're opening. But I talked to a family just recently. They were at UCLA. They couldn't even physically go in, and they just walked around the campus, couldn't go anywhere. So one of the biggest things I tell every family is to go online and go virtual. And what I mean by go virtual is every college has a really good website that will kind of take you through a virtual, but there's a couple little, I call it hacks, that I think would be useful. One of them I would say is a website called YouVisit, YouVisit.com. Mainly this was come out, we've worked with them in the past, where parents of high school kids and even the high school kids themselves could go on there and actually physically walk through classrooms and physically using some virtual reality. And if you have those Oculus glasses, for video gaming or anything, you could use those, and they have a whole VR for Oculus as well, which is really, really cool because you feel like you're walking through it. But you can go get a really cool, it's not biased by and I'm not saying that in a bad way from the college's website, but this is a third-party website where you can physically, virtually walk through the whole college campus and get that experience. So I think that's one of them that's actually really cool. I had some interns a couple years ago, actually 2015, have some trial VR goggles, and they walked through YouVisit back then. And in the last 5 years, the technology has kind of gone through the roof. It's really cool. So I think that's one solution on the virtual visits. I think also a big one is when all the admission deadlines are changing, you have to be up on it. The high schools are helping with that. But again, if you're going virtual from high school, even, you might not be able to sit with your high school guidance counselor. So going on to the colleges, specifically the colleges have done a nice job on their websites talking about their deadlines. For instance, May 1st traditionally is the deadline for most colleges. If you're going early action or early decision, again, if you're seniors, you're already into that right now. But if you're juniors, no, it's beginning. A lot of them are starting in September, October, even November. And then there's many schools that have rolling admissions as well. So you just have to be flexible. And I think now with the whole COVID and everything's so fluid, just try your best to always check the websites of the colleges for their admissions deadlines, because that's a big one. Last one, I think hit on the AP testing. If you go to College Board, and when testing centers, they've talked about initially going from traditional face-to-face administered exams to doing virtual. They tested those last year and had some issues. So it's all, it's another fluid situation. But the idea, I tell all of our families that are looking to go to the higher end schools, definitely treat it as if you're taking your honors courses, no different, taking your AP tests, AP classes, no different, and continue to challenge yourself, because admissions counselors always talk about, hey, how hard or how challenging is that class schedule for those students, for the kids that are applying to college. So always continue to take those honors in AP. I think the last thing, Keith, I would talk about, and we can maybe expand if you want me to a little bit more, is on the SAT and ACT, because that's probably a number one question families are talking about, because every kid is like, I don't want to have to take the SAT anymore. I don't have to prep for it. So
that has come across a lot in our office of late. So a lot of schools are not we're not requiring standardized testing anymore. There's a big push on that. For equality, or whatever the purpose or reasons is, it doesn't really matter, but that has been a big adjustment. So families are asking, do we still need to do them? Is there any benefit to taking the SAT, ACT, or SAT? So Adam, what is your opinion on this?
No, I get that asked so much. So here's what I look at. I think everybody has experienced or even heard in the news, SAT and ACT test centers are closing due to COVID-19 outbreak. The confusion of what centers are closed, moved, or even reopened, then closed again. I've heard crazy stories of parents driving out of state because they heard something was open. They prep for it. The next day, they fly or even drive Saturday morning to go to testing center, and they get there and it closes, and they never knew about it. You have to look at the most up-to-date information. So I'm a big fan of going right to the source. So College Board has a link on the top of their website explaining the most up-to-date information regarding rescheduled tests, make updates, refunds if you paid for it and it did. So go there, number one. Again, in addition, it's important to keep up to date on which colleges are doing the waiving the SAT and ACT requirements for next few years for their incoming class. Again, even if a school says it's test optional or they're not asking for the SAT or ACT, they're waiving it, that's like a green light for your kids to be like, oh, I don't have to study for it. I don't have to prep for it. I don't have to stress, which is true, but not true. It is true because that's one thing, but some schools will still allow you to give them your scores. If you score well, it's only going to help you. And what most families don't realize is a lot of colleges, not every one of them, but a lot of colleges are still using the SAT and ACT scores to help with the merit-based aid versus the need-based aid. And what that means is think about it as like a pool of applicants. Last couple of years, that pool is huge, and depending on what your score is, you might get a little piece of the merit-based financial aid pie. Now, all of a sudden, half, if not even 2/3 of the kids aren't taking it because they don't have to. Well, if the schools are still giving out merit-based aid because they have no other way to kind of judge besides GPA and resume, which kids are the kids they want to bring to their school and not, the kids that are showing the initiative to continue to prep and then take the SAT and ACT if they're able to, it's a much smaller pool with just the same, if not more, financial aid available merit-based. So I'm always telling, I know kids don't want, if they're listening to this, don't want to hear about it, but if you've got a sophomore, a junior, even a senior that is telling you they don't have to take the SAT or ACT, I think you can let them understand that, hey, this could equal scholarship money. So it's definitely worth prepping for it and then trying your best to take it.
No, that's great information. And for those of you listening that don't know this, Adam's got a company that helps students with this, helps them find the right colleges or universities that match up with their needs, helps them with the application process. They've been a huge benefit to our business. We work with a lot of families who are looking for opportunities to get their kids in their dream school, right, as you may say, and then figuring out the best way to pay for it. And so we always handle a lot of the money side, but in terms of the college admissions process and all those things, Adam's team has been a great resource for us. And so if you have any questions on that, you can reach out to us and we'll help you. But let's switch over and talk a little bit about the money side, right? College costs have continued to rise even during a pandemic, right? And even with a lot of with the campuses closed, we have not seen the reduction in college costs that everyone keeps sitting around and praying for. So what are some of parents' biggest concerns right now? How do they maximize aid in a pandemic? Is it different than they did beforehand?
I don't think it's different. I think it's actually they need to even buckle down even more to get the right information. And I think a theme today should be go right to the source. Do your best to not just, there's too many rumors out there. I know I contribute to a lot of news and radio and all that kind of stuff. And half my job is like, what are myths about financial aid? How do I debunk
Right.
those? So a couple myths I kind of run into a lot is I make too much money, parents tell me, or my child's not a great student, or I own a home, and all those kind of things. No, those are all pretty much a myth. Make too much money. It doesn't. You always fill out the financial aid forms. You always fill out the FAFSA, which is the free application that's online. That opens up. The FAFSA opens up October 1st. There's a myth that, if you don't have it in by October 1st, you're not going to get any money. I'm like, no, that's not it. It is traditionally first come, first serve with the buckets of money. But again, if you get it in, you want to get it in as early as possible, but you don't want to make any mistakes. You don't want to miss any deadlines. I think I saw a stat recently. There's about $254 billion of total financial aid grants is available. But if you don't know where or how to get it, that's a big issue. And if you don't apply for it, you're 100% not going to get it. So it doesn't really hurt you to apply to do the FAFSA for you and do it as quickly as possible. A couple other things I think is really important. We talk about my child's not a great student. If you're talking about need-based financial aid, which is what you're looking for by filling out the FAFSA, it does not matter the grades of your student. This is based on need. The merit-based financial aid I talked about with the SAT and ACT before, that's going to go off of scores on those board tests. It's going to go, there's other scholarships available, endowment money from schools that go into GPAs, that go into board scores, that go into resumes and all that. But the FAFSA and then the CSS profile, which is additional paperwork that some of the higher end schools, private schools, and some of the high end public schools are going to ask for. It's just more paperwork. But the reality is that paperwork's worth it. Try your best. You might just get some financial aid just for filling it out. So don't make a mistake on it. Don't miss a deadline, but try your best to get your FAFSAs and CSS profiles done as quickly as possible. And again, there's a lot of firms like ours out there that can help you with it. If you don't need the help, some people are, more accounting types that are like, hey, this is easy, but majority of the families pretty challenging, and that's what scares away the families. So definitely don't get scared away. At least fill it out. The worst thing is going to happen that you don't get any financial aid. Best thing has happened. You're going to lower that cost to pay for college.
Definitely. And something else that we hear a lot in our office, Adam, and I'll let you kind of clear it up, is do you fill your FAFSA out just one time before your freshman year, or is that something that has to be done every year?
So what happens is most people, it's been confusing because there's some changing over the years, but a couple of years ago, it changed to what's called the prior year. So up until recently, a couple of years ago, you would fill out the FAFSAs on January 1st. It would open up. And let's just fast forward and say my son's a senior this year, and you're January 1st, 2021, you'd be filling it out. Well, in previous years, you would be using 2020's tax returns, and most people didn't even have their tax returns done yet because it just opened up. So they're doing estimates, and then they had to kind of change it down the road. It just became a complete cluster for the colleges and the families. So a few years back, they changed the deadline to the opening of it to October 1st, and they used the prior year's tax returns. So let's just say my son's a senior this year. I've already filled out the financial aid forms for my family, but I'm using 2019's tax returns versus 2020's. So that's why it's called the prior year. So what happens though is now all of a sudden, let's fast forward next year, my son goes to UCLA. He's going into his sophomore year of college. Because of COVID, I lost my job, or because of something else, my situation changes. You fill out the financial aid forms every single year. That is definitely a big mistake families do is they fill it out one time, their situation changes, and they never reapply for financial aid and don't update the schools on what happened or what their situation looks like. So the goal is every single year you're going to renew your financial aid forms and you're going to fill it out again. And that gives yourself a chance to let the schools know what the difference is.
Yeah, I think a lot of parents where families forget about that. They don't do it every year. Then they either lose the money they were getting, or like you mentioned, especially with everything going on with COVID right now, you may have not gotten aid previously that you might be available to you now, or you might qualify for now. So just because you haven't got it in the past, don't not do it in the future. You need to do it every year. That's your best opportunity because less kids may apply. There might be more money this year. There's a lot of
absolutely.
things out there that can change.
Keith, I would say one thing you hit on too, which is a great point, is number one, do it every single year. Number two, if your situation changes, and because you're doing it on last year's 2019's tax returns, most families probably did a lot better in 2019 than they did in 2020 based on COVID if it affected them. So you're filling out forms and you're not really getting a chance to say, hey, by the way, my income's not the same, or hey, by the way, my situation's changed. So there is an appeals process, and every school is a little different. And I think that's where our firm really helps not only take the time off of it, but also helps in regards to clarify how to specifically communicate to colleges and appeal your financial aid award offer. And then, there's things called special circumstance letters that you could write, letting them know that either job loss or if there's medical bills or whatever that might be. There's a specific way you can, I would say, negotiate with the colleges to help them understand your situation. That's a little bit different than just the numbers. Because right now you're a social security number and you're an AGI and your assets to the school. You got to, get off of that and let them know, hey, there's a person and a family behind this, and this is what the situation is. And I think the appeals and negotiations process is something where you get a chance to show the school, hey, what is the why behind my numbers?
No doubt. And it has been one of the biggest impacts for the families that we've partnered with together on. We've seen $10,000 to $15,000 additional grants or money from the school on an annual basis for families just by going through that process. And it's just been a huge asset for our team to be involved with you guys, and then for our families to have access to your guys' knowledge of the college admission process and the financial aid process and what we can do to get the funds from the school. Adam, we're going to wrap up here. Tell me, is there one thing that I did not ask about, or one last tidbit or a piece of advice that we want to give to parents or students right now who are looking at universities where we're starting to apply for college?
I think the big thing is don't be afraid to ask for help. So many people have, so much pride and be like, oh, when I went to college, I didn't have to do any of this, or when I did this, I did that. Well, it's 10x the cost of college from when you and I went to school or whatever it might be. So, look to firms like ours to help you on that. Also, Keith is an expert on, I always say, hey, every family's got their fair share to pay for college. You've got to try and lower it with financial aid and merit-based, need-based financial aid as possible, but you still got a fair share to pay. Keith and his team will really help you develop a plan to help you maximize financial aid, but a smarter, better way to pay that fair share of college. And that might be, lower interest rate loans. It might be smarter financial products, whatever it might be. We're experts in our lane. Keith and his team are experts as well. And I think don't be afraid to ask for help, because, that's where most of the families make their biggest mistakes, is assuming something in this whole process.
The huge concern for most families is, how do we pay for this without divulging or just erasing what we've saved for retirement? How do we take care of our kids and ourselves at the same time?
For sure. And the one thing I use a bad joke, but I say, hey, you don't want to overpay for college by $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 over 4 years. They're not even going to name a library after you. And that's what hits home for a lot of the families. They're like, listen, you don't have to, but you're overpaying. And, working with Keith and his team, and then with us, you're able to at least identify that, hey, I'm not going to make the same mistakes my neighbors or my friends have.
Right. Well, Adam, I appreciate your time. For those that you don't know, I've been a partner or a friend of Adam's now for a number of years. Myself and another gentleman in his office were able to co-author a book about college funding. It's called The Secrets of a College Financial Aid Expert. If you'd like a copy of that book, it's a quick read. There's some great information in there, though. You could reach us. My email is keith@steadfastws.com. That's STEADFASTWS.com. You can find us at steadfastws.com on the web, where you could give me a call, 832-506-9034. I want to thank Adam Blumenthal again, our guest. He's the co-founder of the College Authority. A number of high schools and universities around the country use him for his advice and for his help with families. And it's just been a privilege of mine to get to know him, to be a friend of his, and to get to do business together. So again, Adam, thank you for your time. If you have any questions out there, please feel free to reach out to us. Thank you guys very much.
Keith, thank you. I appreciate it.
Well, someone should definitely name a library after you two. I'll tell you, you just created a must-listen for parents of college-bound students, gentlemen. Thank you. Adam Blumenthal, co-founder of the College Authority, and Keith Beggs of Steadfast Wealth Strategies. Make sure to listen to all episodes of Keith's podcast, My 2 Cents. It's easy. Just use the subscribe button on this page, and you can also share with the share button.
Thank you for listening to My 2 Cents with Keith Beggs. Click the subscribe button below to be notified when new episodes become available. All securities discussed are offered and provided through Steadfast Financial Planning, LLC. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Steadfast Wealth Strategies. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional investing advice. Always seek the advice of your financial advisor and/or qualified financial service provider with any questions you may have regarding your investment planning.
This podcast is not intended to provide specific investment, financial planning, tax, or legal advice. It is intended for educational purposes only. Please consult your tax advisor, financial advisor, or legal professional for specific advice on your specific situation.